Relocation, Strategic Relocation, North American Guide to Safe Places, 3rd edition by Joel M. Skousen and Andrew Skousen. Amazing research. And again, we'll be showing you some of those graphics. Joel, thank you so much for taking time out today to join us via video Skype.
My pleasure, Alex, to be with you.
You've got the floor, just a general analysis of where the world is today, because viewers will want to know that. And of course, Joel, when you are done answering that question, why are the elites themselves digging in? Joel Skousen.
It's essential to understand, Alex, that the government, and I don't have to tell you this, the government is intending someday to take down dissidents, those that disagree, those that believe in conspiracy. And it's important to understand that they're taking many years to prepare the people to do that. The TSA monitoring of individuals, the screening at the airports, the now screening at bus stations, the Viper teams that are on highways checking people out. We're getting close to a show your papers mentality that was prominent during the Hitler regime. They're preparing, of course, to do indefinite detention. That's one of the scariest things when you lose habeas corpus, the right to bring forth the body and determine through a hearing why they should be locked up. And the government clearly is intending to lock people up and throw away the key and not tell you or tell any of your relatives where or what you're doing. It's also very dangerous, as you've documented on Infowars.com. The United States has been preparing, shoveling millions of dollars out the door towards the creation of detention camps, concentration camps in the verbiage of World War II. But this is terrifying to American people. And what my message is that this is very real. It's going to happen someday. It may be a few years and before they start to implement that. They have to have, obviously, an excuse to be able to create martial law. They cannot do it on a flimsy excuse. They've used terrorism to the hilt for a decade now. And that's wearing off people because we really don't have real terrorism. We have the kind of provoked terrorism that allows them to justify these continuing draconian laws. But eventually it will come down upon us, and people have to be prepared beforehand. Once the day of reckoning comes, once people start to disappear like you and I, and people start to wonder, where did Alex Jones go? The day of reckoning is here, and people have to be prepared long in advance of that. One of the questions I get often is, who's preparing? What's this prepper movement all about? Well, it is true that well-heeled people are finally joining the movement. The prepper movement, that is, people who are professionals, who are starting to prepare, has just tripled and quadrupled even the past 2 years. And the reason is the people with money have heretofore always thought that government will take care of us, government won't fall, government can handle everything. And everything we've learned about the finances of the economics this year has told us that the governments cannot sustain this forever, and they are bending over backwards to bail out the EU, to bail out the United States, and there's no end in sight. And so even well-heeled people are starting to throw dollars at this. We've just completed the largest project we've ever done in the United States. Over many, many multi-million-dollar private residence, completely secure, and this has never been done before. We've done hundreds of projects. We've done projects in every state of the union, but this is the first time done something where clients can afford everything possible that we have been able to design, including ballistic shutters and automatic mechanisms for tracking intrusion with cameras and other means available. Even the government has been preparing. In fact, they've been preparing decades ago. I used to get information from contractors in Colorado telling me when they'd see one of my designs, oh, we did something similar to this a couple of years ago for an ex-CIA deputy chief who moved here, and he put a bunker under his house. And DEA people and ex-military types that were in the know were building bunkers under their cabins in the remote areas of Colorado. And the reason was clear, that they knew that someday the government would allow a major attack upon this nation, major social unrest and destruction, and that they were prepared for it. They don't tell us to prepare.
Joel, I want to interrupt you just because I want to get into the book itself, Strategic Relocation, and to tell that people should just get the book and really study it, because it's almost impossible in spoken word to break down the deep research that you've put into this. And as I said, the top experts we've interviewed continue to reference Strategic Relocation, North American Guide to Safe Places, 3rd edition, that's available at Infowars.com. And I want to thank you for making it. But I will get this question after you're on. So let's just answer it now and then let you continue and get in. I'm sorry to interrupt. Why do the elite want this? People keep thinking, hey, America's run by Americans. It's like the country we had 70 years ago. Why? A, who's running the country, and what's their larger stratagem? Why do they want to destroy the golden goose?
Well, it isn't really that they want to destroy the golden. It's a complex answer to that question. I'll try to give a synopsis as quickly as I can. These people are what I call globalists. They believe in a global agenda, a global world government, and global control of all economic resources, but not in the sense of communism, not in the sense they want to destroy it. They want to harness it. They want to put it to use. They want to control it. They want to milk it for everything it's worth without destroying it. And in that, they're more like Fabian socialists than they are communists. But they still do want absolute control over dissidents. And the way they're going to get this control is by bringing what I believe is a third world war, a nuclear war upon this nation. I realize that we're all concerned about economic collapse. I have long said in my World Affairs brief, I don't believe they're going to collapse the dollar. I think they're going to milk it in a downward slide until war comes, and then war will give them an excuse to do two things. One, walk away from the debt, which is unpayable. There's no way we can undo the deep debt structure that we've got. But they can walk away without blame because they can blame it on war, having destroyed the computers, having destroyed the financial centers. And then the number two thing they say after they come out of their bunkers is say, now, the Russians deceived us, the Chinese deceived us, we didn't know that they were going to attack. But our military is destroyed, and our only salvation now is to join forces with the remnants of the rest of the world, and we'll put together a militarized world government to beat Russia and China. And they'll rebuild the New World Order without national sovereignty under a militarized world government, and they'll never give us our sovereignty back like they did after World War II. Now, that's why I think they're preparing. These people know the war's coming. That's why they're building bunkers, not just nice cabins out in rural country. If they're only preparing for economic collapse, they might be just doing rural, but they're doing bunkers. And that means they know that it's nuclear. That means they know that it's severe and that they have to survive that. And Americans need to survive that too.
And Joel, you've studied history and written a lot about it. I've studied it. When you look at a Hitler or a Stalin or a Mao or a Pol Pot or a Julius Caesar to a lesser degree, they want total power and domination. That's the goal. They'll do anything to get there. And this is not just your opinion. The elites are saying that they will engage in any amount of mass murder to bring in their global government. And it's all about control. It's about that goal. And if you analyze the mindset, it is madness, but there is a method to the madness, and they are accelerating their program right now. Why are they so threatened by American patriots and dissidents? Well, I have my answer. We have a chance to beat them. I think because of your uncle and yourself and myself and Ron Paul and countless others, G. Edward Griffin, that for decades have been exposing the criminal conspiracy of the globalist, that's our ace in the hole. And because of the fact that people were ready to be arrested, ridiculed, attacked, all of that, now you see millions of guns being sold a month. They say, we don't trust the government. That's why. We see people becoming aware of this at such a level that I think there's chances that we could take this country back. So let's talk about your views on that versus, where this is going if they go ahead with their provocation to allow this country to be attacked.
Well, I do believe, Alex, that the only thing that threatens their existence is a broad-based knowledge of conspiracy about this globalist agenda. And it has to do with Agenda 21. It has to do with the Law of the Sea Treaty. All of that control agenda comes into the basis of world government and government control. And that's why the media, even the faux media, Fox News, et cetera, is so virulent against anyone like you and I who believes in conspiracy. They will not have us on national television, even to discuss it, because they don't want the genie out of the bottle. And that's our only salvation, is to make sure that a broader sector of America knows that there is a real live conspiracy to control government, to control both political parties. Anyone who thinks that we're going to gain salvation by electing another Republican is kidding themselves. It's never going to happen. It's not that it's unhelpful in the sense that if you campaign for someone like Ron Paul, who really will make a difference, but if you go after an establishment representative of the Republican Party, they will only do what George Bush did to us. And conservatives have to wake up to this. I think a lot of them did wake up after George Bush. I think if Romney gets elected, they're going to wake up when he betrays us as well. It's going to be very sad, but unfortunately, that's the reality. We have got to realize that it's only by using credible information to convince people that there is conspiracy in this world, legitimate conspiracy, that we're going to be able to win this battle. And that's what they're afraid of. That's why they have to shut down dissidents.
Exactly. I mean, everything they do is obsessed with those of us that know, but now it's not your uncle 60 years ago exposing this. They're announcing world government. They're announcing global carbon taxes. California is forcibly inoculating kids without parental consent. They're openly announcing they're going to outlaw single-parent homes. I mean, it's more and more in the open. Why do you think they've shifted to it being out in the open now? So much more.
It's to accustom people to it. They used to have a rule: you don't ever inconvenience the majority enough to make them rebel against your agenda. But they started doing it with the TSA. It's in your face. And they won't let up, no matter how much people complain, no matter how ruthless they become with the TSA. They won't let up, and that's because they want to get us used to it, and they're driving it through, and that's what I think they're doing. They're more and more confident now that we don't have the power to cut them off. And right now we don't, until we get the word out more and more. I took a lot of flack in my book, Strategic Relocation, because I do discuss and give evidence of conspiracy. I don't make it the major portion of it, but I do take some flack. I have people who have dismissed my book because I believe in it. But as one person said on the Jim Rawls Survival Blog website, that's a reason to believe in it, because he sees what's going on.
Well, Joel, let me stop you right there. I have to be careful here, because I'm told things in confidence, and if I give up confidences, then I don't get the information. But I, 3 separate times, have had offers from national media in the last 12 years, and they admit global government's real. They say it's best for all humanity. Stop talking about it, and we'll make you this big star. I was offered Glenn Beck's job before it existed. Once I saw him, I knew that that was what was happening. And now I know from inside sources, he refused to fully sell out, kind of woke up, so they kicked him out. I talked to another national media figure yesterday, and he said, he said more than, oh my gosh. He said, it's all true. I can't say it over a phone, but I was taken in, like I'd heard you years ago say this, Alex. I didn't fully believe it. I was told the same stuff you were told. And this person is a contemporary, probably even bigger than I am in some ways. If I said the name, everybody would know it. But it's like you don't know it's real until they call up and threaten to cut your wife's head off to her and say, by the way, I'm watching you. Your dog's on the back porch right now wanting in. You don't know how, and in a way it's a blessing that I have so early on had it hit me full on, because let me just tell viewers out there, this is real. I mean, the conspiracy is real. And my point was, you've got to feel good in a way, Joel, that you get criticized for talking about globalist conspiracy. Well, now it's out in the open, but still some people laugh at us. And I'm just telling them, look, this is real. This is like denying the Atlantic Ocean exists. Do you see my point?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's pretty difficult, and we're dealing with even false conspiracies that throw out there. There's this guy Drake now explaining or trying to make the case that the military is about ready to arrest all of the globalists, the whole cabal, and it's absolutely bogus.
We always hear this every year, decade after decade. The white knights are coming. Everything's okay.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. We're going to have to face this head on with good hard work, with helping people understand what's real, and getting people person by person to change their opinions and get ready to accept nothing but people and elect people who will not compromise with this establishment. And that's why, with all of the faults that people may criticize Ron Paul with, one thing I assure them, I said, he's the only one who we can trust to buck the establishment and stop their agenda.
Well, I know Senator Rand Paul, personally and privately over the years a little bit, and he's done a good job up there. But in a way, he's not as pig-headed as his dad, because I had him on yesterday, and he said, well, if Mitt Romney did ask me, I have to say it is an honor. And I'm not even saying he's bad leaving the door open, but in a way, I just think the pig-headedness for basic issues is the only thing, because you can't make deals with the system. And I'm not saying Rand was even saying that, but because he's a nice guy, it's almost like being too nice. I'm not even sure what I'm saying. My point is, this open world government conspiracy is now open. I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
Well, it isn't openly admitted as a conspiracy. It's openly talked about. They're trying to convince people. No one's admitting openly that they have a deep, dark agenda, and that's our point. This is an evil agenda. They may try to sell it for its benefits. They may sell it in the name of free trade, but this is an evil agenda that is aimed at our freedoms and our liberty and our persons if we dissent against it.
I think you just really crystallized things for me. That's it. Before, they wouldn't even admit that there was a move to global government.
Yes.
And a global tax and all this. And so now they admit that, but say, oh, but it's good.
Right.
Okay, Joel, we've talked about the lay of the land right now geopolitically. The world government's real. The elites are preparing. We've put together some graphics from your amazing book that we're going to be showing here chapter by chapter. So basically, it's a high-tech slideshow. You've got the floor in the next 40 minutes or so. Give us a brief synopsis of the book that really is the Bible for finding safe regions, safe areas, not just the prepping supplies themselves, but the general lay of the land. Joel, lead us through the book.
Well, the first thing I do is start out and talk about, this is a new section added in the third edition about international retreating. There's a lot of the powers that be are moving overseas. I don't think they're actually leaving all of their assets behind in the United States, but there's a lot of people in our liberty movement that are thinking about moving overseas or have done so. And I talk about that extensively as a new section in the book. But I might just give a few caveats here that are important to keep in mind. First of all, you cannot judge international retreats, and I have lived overseas in many of these nations, so I speak from firsthand experience, by the expat community. These are the expatriates who are reveling and being able to live cheaply and without anyone bothering them in other countries. There are no guarantees in a lot of these other countries. And things will be totally different vis-a-vis Americans, foreigners living in other countries than they are right now when those countries want American dollars and are welcoming you there. I can tell you that these other countries, even though our country has the leadership of the globalists, these other countries are lapdogs to those globalists, and they tell them to round up Americans and they'll round them up. That's what you don't realize about other countries. And it's very difficult to hide and blend in, which is your only defense sometimes when you're trying to hide in foreign countries where you don't match the culture or the language or the race. And so my advice to people who are thinking about moving overseas is to read that section carefully, consider the pros and cons, and last of all, don't burn all your bridges coming back to the United States. And it may well be very, very difficult. One of the reasons I also talk about my world affairs briefing is since I track this, and I'm tracking constantly what the powers that be are doing vis-a-vis this future war that's coming, I intend my world affairs brief to also act as a early warning mechanism to people so that they won't be stuck in one place or another where they don't want to be. Going back to the book, Strategic Relocation, I take the point early on in the book after I cover the various threats. And I do cover the full range of threats in general, whether it's population density, cost of living, taxation, government regulation, alternate medicine, freedom to practice in various states, gun liberty, homeschooling laws. I cover the military threats, the military targets, the nuclear power plants and their locations, environmental threats, health ratings, water, traffic problems, In fact, when you go to the individual states in the book, I give a rating to the states of 1 to 5 stars, and I give a breakdown, a synopsis of these first sections on the threats. I give a synopsis just in one tiny paragraph for each one of these: climate, population density, private land availability, so that you've got at your fingertips a way to compare, to put your finger on one page, one state page versus another. You can flip back and forth. You can look at the maps, which are now in color, showing all of the land use within a state, showing all the nuclear targets. It also shows the nuclear targets in adjacent states, which helps you make decisions if you're going to move to a place near the border of one state to another. There's a wealth of information about threats in this book, but it's not so easy to analyze the relative worth of one threat versus another. In other words, all these threats are not equal. Some threats are deadly, some threats are inconvenient, some threats are just how you prefer to live. So I try to cover those extensively in the book.
Joel, let me interject before you continue, because you brought up, which countries are safer than others to move to if you do choose to exit the U.S. Capital controls. Now if you have a few silver coins, they're trying to take them, the TSA is. Now they're at highway checkpoints, spy groups. All of this is happening. And Joel, now I'm sure you've seen the legislation. It's passed the Senate, it's in the House, to where if you, quote, haven't paid your taxes, no judge, no jury, the IRS just puts you on a list, and then suddenly you can't leave the country and have your passport taken. I mean, that's right out of Stalinist Russia.
Indeed it is.
Can you comment on that?
Sure. The issue of travel controls is going to get ever more important. And remember that every case of a country having travel controls, like South Africa, eventually relents and lets people leave, but they can't take their money with them. So capital controls are essential towards keeping people in the country, because you're not much good if you have to leave the country without your capital. But I think they're going to a total travel control system. I think that's what TSA is all about. And that's why I concentrate on strategic relocation relative to North America, because once you do get out of the country, you may not be able to get back in as well. And I happen to believe that most people are going to be able to survive in this country through strategic relocation rather than foreign. And one of my main reasons is this: having lived overseas in Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, Panama, Guatemala, El Salvador, and in Europe, I can tell you that the number of people who believe like we do is just a handful in other countries. They're out there, but there are millions, thanks to your efforts, Alex, and others. There are millions in this country who believe like we do. And the ability to band together and find protection and find safe places with like-minded people is much greater, perhaps 100 times greater here than in other countries. And ultimately, it's going to be that combination of being able to blend in because you speak the language, you're native, to be able to hide by blending in, and having like-minded people who can front for you if you have such a total control system that you have to be underground and have other people front above ground for you. Chances of doing that here are much, much better than elsewhere.
Joel, I agree. My instinct, my gut, my spirit, whatever you want to call it, is educate everybody, expose the globalist, dig in simultaneously, and stand my ground. Instead of running, just while we still have the internet, while we still have the freedoms that our forebears fought so hard for, hit the globalists as hard as we can and just fight on all fronts. There's a full spectrum resistance to their full spectrum takeover. And the fact is, as things get worse, exponentially more people are now waking up. Again, I think the globalists have miscalculated, but it's going to be one hell of a fight.
It is, and for those of us who are high-profile people and who are fighting, we have to look at the strategy of having our eggs in more than one basket. And I talk about that in my book, The Secure Home, and elsewise, that, you have to be wise. It's better to have multiple baskets to maneuver in than it is to have one big fortress that you think that you're going to maintain.
I agree. It's better to have a couple shacks nobody knows about.
That's right. So let me return to the topic of safe places, Alex. There is a major controversy in the movement, and it happens to generally between Jim Wesley Rawls and myself. He has the redoubt concept, and this is basically 5 states that meet all the criteria for having a military resistance to the New World Order. This is a military-style strategy combined with the ability to grow and do all things and be, and I pick in my highest rated safe places the same Intermountain West, but I'm not restricted to this military viewpoint. I'm very skeptical of confronting the kinds of powers that we're dealing with. I think that we have to have a bigger base of strategy. And one of those strategies that I talk about in my books is concealment and hiding rather than confrontation. I think it's extremely important that people be willing to say, this is too big for me to confront. I'm going underground. I'm hiding. I'm going to conceal, and I'll wait till it passes over rather than confront. And part of that strategy is having multiple places to go to. If you can't afford that, at least you do low-profile housing. You don't make a high-profile home that's obviously a fortress that invites the kind of attack that some people would love to have with the government. But in terms of safe places, I most often get the question, just tell me where the safe places are, Joel, and I'll move there. And it just isn't that simple, because people have to make a living. And while I don't believe that you have to stay wedded to the major metropolitan areas to make a living, you can do some maneuvering. Very few people are going to be able to live in rural America without being attached to a job. Most people have to have a financial lifeline. I consulted a lot prior to Y2K. My first edition of the Strategic Relocation came out in 1998. A lot of people did not take my advice to maintain your financial lifetime. They bailed out, they went rural, they had some savings, and they came back a couple of years later and they were calling me and saying, what do I do now? I'm out of money. Self-sufficiency turned out to be a lot more expensive than I thought it was going to be, and I've got no money. And I said, you're going to have to move back into society, reestablish a financial lifeline, and then do this again the right way. And the right way, and I talk about this because most of my clientele who read strategic relocation can't move lock, stock, and barrel. And so I talk a lot about how to do contingency planning, how to move to the periphery, for example, of a major metropolitan area, how to get out of the ways of the major exit routes for refugees that are going to happen. But I want to talk about that as an example that shows the state that you're in, Alex, in Texas. And in this map are several interesting points. There are yellow areas, which I consider the safe areas in this area. And there's also a lot of red areas that are black and completely red around Dallas, the major population areas of Austin and San Antonio, and large red lines connecting them. These are what I call refugee in and or outflow routes. And it's important to realize that not only to avoid high population density centers, but to watch where those refugees, when food and water is cut off, are going to flow outward into the rural areas. And naturally, most people will flow outward up to 50 miles directly out into the land, but a lot of people will be taking to the roads. The freeway will be clogged, they'll be unusable. And it's very important for people to plan ahead if you're going to stay within a major metropolitan area of how to get out of those areas. And here's the strategies. The first of all is to get advance warning so that you're not on the last train out or you're not in the middle of the pack when you're trying to leave. The second strategy is to be at the periphery of those metropolitan areas so that you're not having to transit an hour's worth of driving to get out of a major metropolitan area through the suburbs as they empty out into the various feeder roads. And the other strategy has to do with the graphic that I put up about retreating exit routes on page 290. This is a very interesting graphic that takes us through New Jersey. New Jersey is the highest density population area because behind it is Staten Island, Manhattan, New York, and all of those people are funneling and going west. They can't go east because there's the ocean. They can either go north, south, or west, and west of that is Philadelphia. All of that has to transit through New Jersey. in any direction that they go. And so I try to point out some very interesting thing in the book of how you plan an escape route, because a lot of people don't realize that that the freeways are like islands. They're like moats around you, and they stop you from crossing them. In other words, you have to find roads that go under the freeways where there isn't an on-ramp or an exit. And the reason you don't want to cross a freeway where there's an on-ramp is because those exits or on-ramps will be clogged with people trying to get on or off the freeway. And if you look at Google Maps, you can actually zero down in close enough that you can follow a freeway around the area that you're trying to get out of. And you can pick places that don't have an on-ramp or an exit. There are very few, but if you pick those and isolate those and plan routes to get through there, you can do it. And that's the kind of stuff that really makes strategic relocation very valuable for people.
I want to briefly interrupt you to talk about that general map you have of just the basic ratings of states. I notice places like New York, California, they only have 1 star out of a possible, what, 5 stars?
That's right. And there are some states that have 0 stars, like Hawaii and Florida. These are places that you simply don't want to be. The entire state of Hawaii is going to be a death trap because it's an island. And that island can't grow very much food. The big island has some possibilities, but none of the other islands can grow very much.
Okay, break that down. What would it be like during a real collapse or a nuclear war or total depression if you were in Florida or Hawaii, 0 star, versus things like California, 1 star?